Hello, ladies and gentlemen, to another brand new episode of Pro Wrestling Culture and another big interview. Here with me, it's a very strange figure, maybe one of the most important person in our channel, Mr. Chairman Daniele Donzi. Hi, Mister.
Hello, Prof. Thank you for inviting me. A very big honor to be here in pro wrestling culture. Not very often I am here, but I really do appreciate all your job in this podcast in this channel, and I'm very honored to be here with our guest tonight, which I want you to introduce.
Okay, so our guest, very important guest, directly from United States, one of the most important wrestler in the recent past of Ring of Honor, Mr. City Bruiser. I miss Matt.
Hello.
Welcome to Pro Wrestling Culture.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this.
Okay, so Chairman, if you want, you can start with your questions.
Right, I will start just from the beginning. We come from we come from the same generation, and yes, I checked. Yes, we are from the same generation, and I think
Does that mean we're old?
No,
no, no,
no.
the exact opposite. We are, the fact that we are the kind of generation that literally has seen it all, right? Because we started having passion for this industry, right? When this became a very very big worldwide business. So I had my figures that literally inspired me through the decades. So my question is, what started your passion? Where when did you think like I would like to try it? Was like in when this happened to me when I wanted to be doing something in the industries. It were the 80s, the end of the 80s, and then through all the 90s. I never changed, and I continued to be a very big fan, and now today owner of this channel. So my question is, when you had that sparkle that inspired your career?
It started when I was 7 years old. My uncle took me to a county fair, and
Mhm.
the old AWA wrestling, the American Wrestling Association, was around, and the main event was Bruiser Brody versus Stan Hansen,
Wow.
and they brawled into the crowd. And I remember Brody coming, standing right next to me, and to a 7-year old, he looked 20 feet tall. And he's got the blood and the sweat, and he's doing the huss. And I looked at my uncle and said, "This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Give me
Wow.
more, just feed me more." And I just became obsessed with Brody and tried to find everything I could. So that's how I got into Japanese wrestling and Puerto Rican wrestling and the territory wrestling. And because of him, I was able to discover like the Freebirds and Bam Bam Gordy, and I was able to discover later on Mick Foley, when he was Cactus Jack, and ECW and Tommy Dreamer and all that. So, but it all goes back to that fateful day, when I was 7 years old and Brody was right there, and just I fell in love with professional wrestling at that moment.
Wow, wow, that is the. I think we all have that kind of moment, the kind of things, and through all the time, right? You were inspired by that man, but I think you had that Cactus Jazz and Samaria. So in the time, which one inspired you, and which one like you looked up to, and in the day which. Well, I have a lot of questions, so let's start with which one you were looking up to for the decades.
Before I started wrestling, I always looked up to a Bruiser, like Bruiser Brody right away, just had my fascination.
Okay.
And then because of him, I was able to find Terry Gordy, Bam Bam Gordy, because I was always a bigger kid as a kid. I'm a big man now, but it just drew me to him because he was they both were larger than life. Bam Bam Bigelow was another one because I saw him on the independent, territories, but then he got up there in the WWF, and I was like, oh my God, like he's not your typical Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, Ultimate Warrior, because he was a big guy, but they weren't making fun of him like they did with the big guys back then, like the Bastion Boogers and the Mantars and stuff. He actually had their respect, and it was just amazing to watch him. And they were putting him up against guys like Bret Hart, $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase,
Wow.
Doink the Clown, who was Matt Bourne at the time. And it was like, man, I was hooked. And then as I got more and more into wrestling, Scott Hall, I became a fan of, because he was so good on the microphone and he just didn't care. Like, especially when he got into WCW with the NWO run. After I got into wrestling, I started falling in love with different guys like Terry Funk, Harley Race, who trained me. I had a much more respect for their work rate and how they put matches together and stuff. Shawn Michaels, Triple H, just watching those guys and how they moved and stuff like that. And I was like, okay. But I still patterned myself after Brody or Gordy or Bam Bam or even a Vader, because Vader was another big guy that just could do it all. And I was just fascinated by that. And as I got into wrestling, I got a lot more respect for it and started studying them and trying to incorporate their stuff into what I do.
Right. Prof, to you.
Okay. Do you know you have been trained by Harley Race, one of our biggest Italian wrestler nowadays is called Karim Brigante. And do you have memories about Harley Race?
Oh, I've got numerous memories of Harley. When I moved, I was traveling from Wisconsin down to Missouri to train with him, and then I moved down there. And when I moved down there, I found out that he was in the office from usually between 10 a.m. and 10:30 in the morning until after training. So I'd get there right around the same time he did. And I'd spend the whole morning with him talking business. He'd pull out old wrestling books from like Wrestling at the Chase, and he'd explain why he booked what matches. We'd watch some of his old matches, and he'd break them down for us, for myself. And then when Joe Henning got there, him and I became kind of really good friends because we were both hungry and eager, and we're both from the Midwest of the United States. So we would just bug Harley nonstop, like asking him millions of questions. And Harley took the time to talk to us. And Harley was so humble that he always had this saying, wrestling was here long before you, and wrestling's going to be here long after you. So the time that you're in wrestling, why not make it better? And I kind of live with that philosophy, and that's why I try to help out the young students and stuff nowadays, because that's what Harley did. And we had to have annoyed him with all the questions and stuff, but he always answered them. He always answered them. He'd always watch our matches. He'd break down our matches for us. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Everything you do in that ring should mean something. And I value that time with him, and I miss him dearly to this day.
Yeah, you're not the only one. You're not the only one. I've heard Karim is a guy, an Italian guy who always says he's missing the Harley Race. So
I've met Karim a couple times. I actually got brought back after I signed with Ring of Honor. Got brought back for the Harley Race camp, to the week-long camp, to kind of show, hey, look, if you work hard, this system works. And I was like the full circle type guy. And he was there, and I got to talk to him and help him out, try to pay it forward.
Yeah, he's one of the biggest star in Italy now. He wins a lot of title in Europe, so he's a very, very, very good guy.
Yeah, and he's a hard worker, and he deserves it.
Yeah. And Matt, I have one question. Right in 17 years ago, you have your little touch with WWE. Your only match in WWE was in the 24th of January 2006.
Oh, I've actually had more matches than that with WWE.
Oh, really?
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Okay. And what went wrong?
WWE. So my first time with WWE is when Simon Dean made his appearance, and that was in like 2004, I think. I was a plant in the crowd, and they brought me in, and I trashed his set, and I got beat up by him. That was my first time there. And then I was brought in numerous times for different matches. Like I've wrestled Gemini, I've wrestled World's Greatest Tag Team, the Highlanders when they were there, I wrestled them. It was always, I'd show up, I'd do what I had to do. And this is back before they had a performance center. So all your tryout matches were before Raw or before SmackDown. And I was always told, you need to lose weight, you need to put weight on, you need to change this, you need to change that. And I do it, but I was always never really given the yes, like, hey, we're going to put you under developmental. And, but I was always brought back in. And then I remember my last time there, I'd done my Ring of Honor tryout and they were getting ready to offer me a contract, and WWE called me and said they wanted me to come in and do the fake Bray Wyatt. That's when Bray Wyatt was feuding with Roman Reigns. And I said, yeah, I'll come in and do that. And I remember talking to them and saying, hey, do you guys want me to do these workout matches? Do you want me to have a tryout? What do they want? They're like, no, we know who you are. We just want you to do this. And then after I got done, they said, well, hey, we can, we'd like to set up a tryout with you. But I knew at the time I had the offer from Ring of Honor. So I said, no. I'm going to go with Ring of Honor. I want to see what I can do there. And I signed with Ring of Honor and I stayed there pretty much till they got sold. And I don't regret it one bit. I, made a lot of friends that are with WWE right now and still friends with those guys because of Ring of Honor. And yeah,
you became an icon for Ring of Honor. And I remember that one of our memories, our pro wrestling culture memories, was when we met you. I'm sure that you don't remember, but we met during the meet and greet before the Supercard of Honor in 2019.
That was in Louisiana?
No,
where was
it was in New York.
In New York. Okay, so at the Madison Square Garden, right?
Yeah, at the Madison Square Garden, where you wrestled in the dark match with the Battle Royal, and we met you in that time.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah,
that was an amazing experience.
Yeah, and do you have memories of Madison Square Garden, because it's an icon for wrestling center?
Yeah,
and what's your feelings?
Oh, that day was amazing. I remember when they announced that we were going to do it, nobody on the roster believed it, because you know how wrestling is. You hear stuff and you get told stuff and then it never happens. And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh, there's no way. And I was talking to Malonis, my tag team partner, and he's like, there is no way. And if they do this show, they're not going to put us on it. We're just, we're the mid-card guys, And then it slowly got closer, and then they made the graphic for us, and it was like, oh my gosh, we are going to be doing this. And then they brokered the cigar deal with me, so I could have my own line of cigars sold at the Madison Square Garden event. And I was like, okay, maybe this is real. And I remember going to the Fan Fest, and it's like, okay, cool, this is happening. And then walking in the next day and looking up, and the ceiling's so iconic because it's just the way it is. And I remember seeing that, and then standing in the place where like Hulk Hogan used to stand before he was doing the Saturday Night's Main Event and stuff like that. And I was like, this is it. This is happening. And we talked to production. We're like, do you want our entrance through the crowd? Because we were doing our entrances through the crowd at the time. And they said, no, we want everyone to do the stage. So that way you can stop for a moment and look around and take it all in. And I remember getting on the stage. And if you watch back, there's actually a moment where I set the keg down and I kind of look around and it's getting like a grin on my face. Cause it was just like, wow, here I'm in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
And I'm getting in the ring. And not only am I getting in the ring, but I'm getting in the ring with Suzuki, who is a New Japan legend. Liger's going to be in this match, who's a New Japan legend. And then later on, Great Muta is going to be in this match. It's like, oh my God. Like,
yeah. And it was the last time appearance for Jushin Thunder Liger in Madison Square Garden.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. And to be able just to do stuff. And I'd done stuff with Liger and Suzuki earlier for Ring of Honor, but it was just really cool to be in that moment where it's like, okay, this is Liger's last match and I get to be a part of it.
I watched the last match in Madison Square Garden for Jushin Thunder Liger and the last match of Jushin Thunder Liger in Tokyo Dome.
Yeah.
In the same year. Yeah, I watched.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So cool. Yeah.
It's amazing just to be a part of that history of such a historic figure, not just in Japanese wrestling, but just professional wrestling. Because he was the first match of Monday Nitro. If you think about it, him and Brian Pillman were the very first match in WCW Monday Nitro. And
that's so cool.
It's funny because when you go back, my son, when he used to watch wrestling, Liger was his favorite because Liger looked like a Power Ranger. So my son fell in love with Liger. So when I got to do all this stuff with Liger, my son's like, "Can I get a picture with?" I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead," and
Yeah.
he just it made his day. It was really cool to see his face light up that I'm able to do stuff with a guy he looked up to.
Mhm. I think there are a lot of humble guys in wrestling.
I try to be as humble as I can because Harley was
Mhm.
humble, and if anybody could have an ego, Harley Race can have an ego. Like he deserved it, but he never did. He was the most humble man I've ever met. There was a time where I couldn't pay my electric bill
Mhm.
when I was living there, and they never got shut off. And I was like, well, this is weird. Like, do I get free electric? Like, what's going on? And it turns out Harley paid my bill, but didn't tell anybody. Didn't ask for any money in return. Didn't ask for a thank you. Didn't even say he did it. To me, that's the most amazing thing. And that's why I try to stay humble, because you see a guy like that who has every right to be an egotistical guy, and he wasn't. He was very humble and very down to earth.
Mhm. I think relevance shouldn't change you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, this is what should happen. A lot of guys
Yeah.
don't follow that rule. Actually, that's bad.
No,
Well,
but they should, because
They should.
without professional wrestling, we wouldn't have jobs. Without fans, we wouldn't have jobs. Without other guys you wrestle with, we wouldn't have jobs.
Yeah.
Speaking of jobs, and you have been for a long time a Ring of Honor, and you have seen literally the rise and fall of the Ring of Honor, and I'm sure you are watching today's Ring of Honor where they are. So, how do you evaluate this? How do you see it? Do you think they could be like a third major player today instead of being like um, purchased by the AEW today? Where everything went wrong with the Ring of Honor?
Um, I think it was during the pandemic.
Mhm.
We were putting shows on and stuff, but before the pandemic hit, we were, as a roster, we're pushing for live shows, because we figured in order to be a player, you needed a live TV show. Like, we were taping our shows, which is fine, but the results get out, you know what I mean? And no one wants to come. Where like a Monday Night Raw or a SmackDown are live. This is before AEW was a thing, And we remember saying we need a live show, and we were pushing for it. And before the pandemic hit, we actually filmed. It was called Free Enterprise, and that's what they were using to shop around to the different networks. And we were hoping we'd land something, because, and they were looking like every Thursday to have us live for a 2-hour show, which is like what we kept saying. Like, our show should be 2 hours and it should be live. Our fans want more wrestling. They want more Ring of Honor wrestling. We have great talent. We have great storylines. Let's do it. And then when the pandemic hit, they just pulled everything back. And they're like, we're just going to focus. And they said it was for our safety and our health. But even when fans were allowed back in, we weren't having TV tapings in front of fans. And it's like, we're so different right now, and not in the way that we want to be different. Like, let the fan, we're doing pay-per-views in front of fans. Let us have the fans at the TV tapings. You don't have to have a full house. Follow the restrictions, follow whatever you got to follow. But they just didn't do it. And I think that's what was the beginning of the end. And that was the nail in the coffin, was they just didn't want the fan. And I get they're trying to put the safety of the fans and stuff, but like, when WWE was doing it, AEW was doing it, we should have followed along. We were already a number 2 contender before AEW, We should have kept with that momentum. And just because of mismanagement, because they had idiots in charge, that didn't know wrestling and didn't want to listen, that's what happened.
This is the problem when you don't have people understanding the business in charge, and these days is one of the things popping up in the discussions and podcasts, because we are often talking about WWE in sale, and everybody saying the same thing. What happens if WWE ends up in not in the good hands, not in people who understands the business? So I prefer to get it. And now you think that the Ring of Honor is in a good spot, like being like the secondary title, the secondary spot on AEW?
No, I don't. I think Ring of Honor, where it was in a great spot, where we had it with that old roster. Now they have Ring of Honor, and they're just putting guys that they have under contract that don't get TV time on that, but they don't have a dedicated source of just Ring of Honor.
But
They do a pay-per-view every once in a while, but they don't have a regular TV, show. They don't have regular roster members. They only brought back a few guys, from the original roster. So now they're throwing their AEW guys out there. So it's not really, it's kind of like when WWE bought ECW. You know what I mean? You had,
the same
it's
thing.
almost the same thing. You wanted to
Yeah.
see the Sandman, you wanted to see Sabu, you wanted to see Raven, you wanted to see Tommy Dreamer. And what you got was Kurt Angle and Bobby Lashley. Well, they're great wrestlers, don't get me wrong. The guys that are wrestling on Ring of Honor now are great wrestlers, don't get me wrong. But when you think Ring of Honor, you don't think of a Max Caster, or you don't think of the FTR. And FTR are amazing wrestlers. You know what I mean? Like, you think the Briscoes, you think the Kingdom, you think Silas Young, Beer City Bruiser, Cheeseburger.
We had Cheeseburger 2 months ago in our podcast and in Italy. I met him.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. You think of Shane Taylor Promotions. You think of that kind of stuff, and it's
But what I think is at least they saved the legacy, right? They're saving the World Championship. They're saving especially one of the most valuable thing, which is the library. Actually, the AEW. I'll tell you, I'm Matteo knows I'm not a really big AEW fans, but having saved that that library means a lot. I think for the wrestling fans. So I think they did, at least they saved that. I would like to understand what could be like if they can make it to have another TV shows. Like today we saved the championship, then the library. Maybe probably a 2-hour show, maybe in FS1, maybe in another.
I think they should have changed AEW Rampage to Ring of Honor one shot in every week. I think it could be the perfect spot for them.
And they could have brought back a lot of us that know the Ring of Honor style and not changed the production of it, because the production was really good for Ring of Honor. I wouldn't have changed anything about it. I would have just switched over. Okay, Tony Khan's your boss now instead of Sinclair. And like you said, we put it on Friday nights, or maybe we put it on Thursday night on FS1 or something.
Yeah.
You don't have to. Your players are already there. You have the crew already there. Like everybody knows what they're going to do. And then if you want to include the old throwback guys like Claudio or CM Punk and all that, Bryan Danielson, you can include them, but make it look like AEW is trying to invade Ring of Honor.
Yeah. You have to keep the solid part of the Ring of Honor roster, and you can fill some rookie, some new guys, and learn wrestling from the solid part.
Yeah, it's oversaturated now, and it's Ring of Honor got lost in the shuffle, and it's sad because it was a great product.
Yeah, it's a great product. Just one question exactly on the product, because I read a lot of criticism about the spots that are featured in the matches, like a lot of WWE legends saying these new guys, especially referring to AEW guys, how long can they endure with their body? How long they can last?
Right.
How long they want to live if they take those bumps? So you think like
and they're more interested in Twitter or Instagram than the life in ring.
Yeah.
Okay, that is like something that today is like inevitable because like today everyone is on Twitter and Instagram, but they're safety first and they are taking a lot of bumps. Do you think like is it correct nowadays to have like let's say we rebrand by a new TV shows after Ring of Honor, and we allow those guys, young guys, I don't want to say ruin their bodies, but take those bumps week after week after week. You think it's something that people will still enjoy that? And if it's still correct to have this on TV today?
I think they need a hybrid style. You can't take those bumps every single week. I know I've taken big bumps, but my big bumps I save for pay-per-view because it's pay-per-view. And trust me, after 23 years of doing this, I need a hip replacement, I need knee replacement, I need a shoulder replacement. Like my body feels it. I think you can tell a story and still have spots. It's just these kids nowadays don't tell the story. They just want to do the spots. You mentioned Twitter and social media. You can get 1,000 views on Twitter, but does that put any extra money in your pocket? I would rather tell a story where I leave a guy laying for something, and now 1,000 people now buy a ticket to come see that show, because that $1,000 or that 1,000 people that are spending the money on the ticket now helps me with my payroll. Okay, it doesn't get 1,000 clicks on Twitter. Big deal. Twitter doesn't pay me. The company pays me. So those big bumps, you only can do so many. And then it's kind of like I've heard some of the old guys, Dr. Tom, say, you walk into work one day and there's 2 elephants having sex in the parking lot. You walk inside and you go, oh my God, there's elephants having sex in the parking lot. You guys need to come see this. And everybody in the office runs outside and they look at the elephants having sex in the parking lot. Well, now the next day you show up and you're like, whoa, those 2 elephants are still having sex in the parking lot. Now a few people, the people that didn't see it the day before, they come out. By the time you're a month in and those elephants have been in their parking lot having sex for 30 days straight, nobody cares. It's just a thing. That's how these big bumps are. If you're doing them all the time, nobody cares. And that's why if you go back and watch some of these Legends matches, did Undertaker hit the tombstone every single match? No. Did Shawn Michaels hit the super kick every match? No. Did Rey Mysterio hit the 619 or the moonsault? No. They told a story and they made it make sense. So do these guys need to be hitting these big bumps every single match? No. Tell a story so that when you do hit that big match, that big move, everybody likes it and they want to buy a ticket to the next show.
Yeah, this is what I was thinking.
And I want to connect my question to the Daniele's question. Do you feel that be a big man nowadays, it's an hard work?
Oh, yeah, you got to learn to wrestle like a big man. I've seen so many big men do stuff, and I've gone, why are you doing that? You're a 300-pound big guy. Kevin Nash used to say, when you watch old horror movies and you have a Jason or you have a Michael Myers, did they move really fast? No, they moved really slow, and they were methodical, but they were big monsters. That's how big men need to be. If you tell a story, my first feud in Ring of Honor was against Cheeseburger. Now, you talk about a size difference. You have Cheeseburger against me for 6 months straight. But we told a story where he didn't actually knock me off my feet till that 3rd or 4th match. But we built that story of him trying to knock me off my feet. Now, does that make me look horrible because I'm not doing power bombs and moonsaults and all that? No. But it makes Burger look amazing when he picks me up and slams me. When we did the Jericho Cruise, that was what we did for a finish, was he body slammed me. But we took 10 minutes before that saying he couldn't do it. And then he finally did it. He kicks out of my stuff. Then he finally body slams me and pins me. The place went crazy. It's all about the story you tell them. And these big guys, they want to do – I remember I did a moonsault one time at Harley's camp. And Harley goes, good job. You can do it. I don't ever want to see it again unless it means something.
Yeah.
So I can do a moonsault. I just don't do it until I have to. That's why with the frog splash, I had to make it make sense when I would do the frog splash, because you don't expect a guy my size to do that. So we didn't debut it. We debuted it against War Machine at a house show just because they needed something big. But then we waited till a pay-per-view before I did it. Because now everyone's like, oh, wait a minute. This is a 300-pound guy jumping off the top rope. Like, let's take notice of that. And these big guys nowadays need to learn that just because you can do something doesn't mean you need to do it all the time. Do it in the right spot so people are intrigued by it and then come back to it, or make them wait. That's the thing about today's generation, is they want everything so quick and now. Make them wait. Make them wait for that. Make them – maybe everyone's talking about the other guy who's doing all the flips, but if you watch the video, you're in the video too. I don't know how many Young Buck clips I'm in, but I'm in a bunch of Young Buck clips, and all they talk about is the Young Bucks. But the Young Bucks came back and thanked me for doing what I was doing.
Yeah, I think you can do 20 moonsault, but if you don't able to tell a story during a match, you have to stop and you have to change your work.
Yeah, like guys want to do stuff to get noticed by doing all that big stuff, but I'll tell you what, if you want to be a big guy and get noticed, show them you can wrestle like a big guy.
Absolutely. Since we spoke about tell a story, and we mentioned even Instagram and Twitter, how do you think we can still tell a story like we are not ourselves? Like today you have to be yourself, you have an identity. Like there was a time where you were one person on TV and outside you were a completely different person. Today, this barrier is completely down. It's a completely fluid situation. You are in the ring, the person that you are outside of that. So, you think we can still escape a moment from reality and like dive in something that we know is not real. We know is not the real person that media, it's just a character, a gimmick there. Or everything now is like ruined because today with social media and the internet, we exactly know who you are, who your opponent is, and why you are friend with someone or you are against someone.
I don't think everybody knows everything. I have a private Instagram and a private Facebook and a private Twitter that I only have family on there, and I only have my kids and all that. Even the stuff people see, the Beer City Bruiser is a complete character. I'm not. If you were hanging out with me as just Matt afterwards, like it's two totally different people. And I try to tell these young kids today, and that's the problem with social media is you need to create two separate entities. You need to be one thing when you're on TV and in the ring, and you need to be another thing when you're in person. Now, whenever fans come around me, I turn into the Beer City Bruiser because that's what fans know me as. But if it's just me and my wife out to dinner, she doesn't get the beer. She will yell at me if I become the Beer City Bruiser if it's just me and her. I get humbled by her a lot. Like I did a show where I wrestled in front of 2,000 people, and I was getting stuff thrown at me, and I was people were chanting, I suck, and people were pissed off, and I had them in the palm of my hand. And I get home, I walk in, my wife goes, "Oh, the dog just crapped in the yard. Can you go pick it up?" And that's a very humbling experience to go from 2,000 people chanting your name to an hour and a half later, I'm at home and I have to pick up dog crap,
No, yeah.
But
Get it.
but that's when I have to
Right.
make that switch.
Mm-mm.
Mankind had to switch from Mankind to Cactus Jack to Dude Love, but they all had to be separate from Mick Foley. Even the Mick Foley we saw when he was Mick Foley on TV is still different than the Mick Foley is at home. And guys nowadays need to learn how to do that, and they need to separate that. My biggest pet peeve is when guys thank other guys for matches. You're supposed to hate each other to the point where you're punching each other in the face. Can you imagine Ric Flair thanking Ricky Steamboat after one of their matches? Like, "Hey, thanks, we had a great match tonight." You know what I mean? No. These kids nowadays need to learn that everybody reads social media. It's not just a core group of people. And with the retweets and all that, you got to watch what you say. You got to separate the two. So it's okay to have a personal page that you're only friends with certain people on.
No,
Keep it private.
No, it's I'll make an example with two guys actually from Ring of Honor, because now today in WWE, which are Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, everybody knows they're friends.
Yeah.
Actually, why are you fighting each other? We know you're friends. We know you don't hate each other.
Right.
So just to make a clear example of what I was saying, like can they go back to be enemies like that? I should buy it.
Well, and that's the cool thing about that whole storyline going right now is you don't know if they're still friends. Like, is Sami Zayn playing the bloodline to be on Kevin Owens? That's that long-term storytelling that I love. That's like the Bray Wyatt thing. Everyone's like, "Oh, this needs to hurry up and happen." Why? You're watching. You're interested.
Yeah.
The Sami Zayn thing. Why is he fighting Kevin Owens? We know they're friends. Well, okay, if we know they're friends, how come Roman doesn't know that? How come Roman still lets him in the bloodline? Because we all want something to but it's taking this time period, so we're all invested. When will it happen? We don't know. We hope it'll happen because we know they're friends. That's taking what people know and using it against them, I guess you could say. So that's the fun thing about wrestling is what's real and what's not.
You can still tell a story like it can deceive you.
Yeah.
Like if you think about it, you should not be deceived. But how they tell the story, how long they tell the story, it literally deceives you and makes you think everything is like it's something that you want to tune in next week to.
I tell the kids that I train nowadays, use what fans know about you against them. Make them question reality, because that's why fans come to shows. You come to shows for 2 hours 2.5 hours to forget about the real world, to forget about COVID, to forget about your cheating wife, to forget about your son that's failing school. You come to wrestling to tune out. You go to wrestling just like you go when you go to a movie to watch the Avengers. You know what I mean? You know, Captain America, the guy who plays Captain America and Robert Downey Jr. are friends, but still you want to watch them kick the crap out of each other for 2 hours because you want to forget about real life. That's what professional wrestling is. And it's up to us as wrestlers to tell that story, to have the fans for, even if it's just for the 10 minutes I'm in the ring, you forget about everything going on in your real life. And you know that I hate this guy that I'm in the ring with.
All right. I just have one last question, and then I let two more. Throughout your career, all right, you have a long career. Which is the one accomplishment that you will cherish forever? Like, my career will mean nothing without that, or like that is something that will stay with me for the rest of something that I will tell my son, my nephew, and my 7th generation on.
I have two, actually. The first one is being able to sign a contract and be under contract for 7 years with a major company. Mm-hmm. Because of that, I'm able to, I was able to buy a house, send my kids to college, buy cars. I was able to live live a life. And the second one is wrestling in Japan at Korakuen Hall. Being a Bruiser Brody fan growing up, Bruiser Brody made his name in Japan. So did Mick Foley. You know what I mean? And Terry Gordy. And to wrestle in a building that they wrestled in and made their name in, and not only wrestle one day, but 2 days, and wrestle 3 matches against some very high prominent guys like Goto Hiroshi and Dalton Castle and Trent Beretta. Like, that's a big accomplishment. And I'm very, very, very proud of that. So yeah, those two is when I look back and I'm like, okay, cool. I did that. And that's forever, that's on tape
absolutely.
Forever. Yeah.
Mm-mm. Okay. You lived a lot in the Ring of Honor backstage. So do you have any memories that you could share to us of Jay Briscoe?
Yeah. Jay and I and Mark all got really close. Like he was, I used to text him all the time. Even after Ring of Honor closed, I still kept in touch with him. And when we lost him, it was, I was a wreck. I was crying, angry, the whole process. And Malonis was the same way because the Briscoes made the bouncers. They helped put us on the map. They helped me get a job with Ring of Honor. And what we did to kind of help with the pain is share the stories of how Jamin was. And because he's a great father, a great husband, a great friend, a great brother. And one of my favorite stories that keeps coming up, and it always makes me laugh, it was we always rode together. We'd always, get beer to drink in the car because it's always 300 miles from the next show. And you get done with the show, you get in the car, you drive. Everyone thinks wrestling's this glamorous lifestyle. It's not. It's airports, rental cars, and hotel rooms. So you learn to live on the road. And there was one time we were we did a loop of Buffalo and Toronto. And Brian and I used to do this thing after our matches. It was called the Toast of Honor. And after the match, no matter what, win or lose, we'd bring a cooler of beer and hand it to our opponents. We'd cheers our opponents. We'd drink. And no matter what, win or lose, and then the fans would do it with us. And it was like a, yay, we wrestled, So we're in Canada, and I hate Canadian beer. There's no good Canadian beer. I just despise Canadian. It is horrible. I've had Canadians try to tell me what's good beer, and I argue with them left and right. I just don't like it. So we get up there, and a stagehand goes, hey, I'm going to go get you guys beer for your Toast of Honor. And says, okay, just get a 6-pack. Normally we get a 12-pack because we know we're going to drink all of it. Okay. I said, just get a 6-pack because and Brian's like, wow, what's wrong with Canadian beer? I'm like, trust me, it's terrible. So we get the 6-pack and we grab the 2 beers for me and him to do the toast. We do the Toast of Honor. And as we do it, Brian looks at me and goes, oh my God, this is disgusting. I'm like, I told you, that's why I only got 6. So we put the other 4 in the cooler. We get done with the show. We put the cooler always stayed on the ring truck. So now you go 2 weeks later, we're in Nashville. It's the middle of July, so it's hot. the cooler's been sitting in the back of the ring truck for 2 weeks, and we're in Nashville, and the stagehand brings us he goes, hey, do you want to go get you guys beer? We're like, no, we brought some. He's like, okay, here's the cooler. And Brian opens it up. He's like, oh, look, we forgot. We got this Canadian beer in here still. I said, man, it's bad as is, but now it's been sitting in the back of a ring truck for 2 weeks in summer heat. How disgusting is that beer? Well, Jamin walks in, and Jamin always would walk in and go, hey, bouncers, you boys got that beer? And we'd hold up the beer. And what I'd do is, if he was late in the card, I'd always pull 4 beers aside for him and Mark because they didn't drink before their matches. But I'd make sure they'd have some cold beer after their matches. Mm-hmm. Well, this particular night, he was injured because in Toronto, he got that big cut on his back. So he couldn't do anything. So he was just doing a promo. And he says, so he comes in this day, goes, hey, bouncers, you guys got that beer? And I says, yeah, we got some beer. I said, we got this here. And we got 4 beers from Canada. You know, if you want those. He's like, I'll drink them. He grabs the beer, cracks it open, and slams all 4 of them in front of us. Now, these have to be the most disgusting beers in the world. Brian and I look at each other like, Jamin, those are like 2 weeks old. They've been in the sun. And he goes, hey, free beer is free beer, so it's good beer to me. Then he grabs one of the good ones and he walks out. To the day, the last time I saw him was over Thanksgiving. And every time Brian and I would see him, he no-sell us how bad that beer was. He would not tell us how bad. And I just wanted to get it out of him. Like, come on, Jamin, that beer was disgusting. And we always laughed. And he'd always hug me and say, hey, brother, free beer is good beer. And so the last time I saw him, I asked him. And I'm happy to say that the last time I saw him over Thanksgiving, I was able to give him a hug and say, I love you, man. I'll see you down the road. And he goes, yes, sir, I love you too. You bring the beer next time. And I said, I sure will. And that was the last time I saw him was that's what I got to say. So that's one of the best stories I love of him. I got many, 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 many more. I could fill up your whole day with Jamin stories, but that's always been my favorite because it was always an ongoing thing between the 3 of us.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
very, very, very good story. Very good story and memory.
Yeah.
And I have my last question, but you already answered because our last question in podcast is if you would share some funny stories, but you already did it, so that's okay.
Jamin was a character, man, and all the stories we share of him are great stories because he was a good man and a great father and a great husband, and so I'm glad I could tell a Jamin story, and I'm glad I could fulfill a funny story too. So he'll truly be missed.
Okay, so that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this interview.
Thank you, Matteo, for inviting me. And thank you again to Matt for sharing with us his experience, his knowledge, and his funny story. Actually, it was a really, really great honor to have you in this podcast and on this channel. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bruiser.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.